We have breaking news. Bill Cosby has been found guilty on 3 counts of sexual assault in a Pennsylvania courtroom. Again, Bill Cosby has been found guilty of 3 counts of sexual assault in a Pennsylvania courtroom. Cosby faces up to 10 years in state prison for each of these 3 counts, although that could all be served concurrently. He is 80 years old. There very well might be appeals in this case, but the big news out of Pennsylvania, Bill Cosby, 3 counts of sexual assault, guilty on all 3 counts. So we want to give you updates about this and tell you the details of what happened in the trial. We're going to tell you about an outburst Bill Cosby had where he used a swear word after the verdict in the presence of everybody in the courtroom. So we're going to tell you about that in a second. We're going to give you some of the details of this case. Let me just check the sound here. Make sure you can hear me. So just some quick details on this, on what he was actually charged with and what he was convicted of real quick. So this was a specific incident that he was found guilty of today. He has been accused by a number of women of drugging them and then taking advantage of them sexually while they were drugged. But this incident he was convicted of involved one woman, but at the case, 5 other women testified that he had sexually assaulted them. So this is a controversial thing, by the way, because some think that there will be an appeal saying that those women should not have been allowed to testify. And I don't believe this was the second time this case had come to trial. In the first time, it was declared a mistrial. And I think in the first time, those 5 women had not been allowed to testify. So that could be an issue in terms of an appeal coming up. But let me just show you this right now. As the New York Times said, and I tweeted out, the 3 counts he was convicted of were penetration with lack of consent, penetration while unconscious, and penetration after administering an intoxicant. These are all felonies. They're each punishable by up to 10 years in state prison, though the sentences could be served concurrently. So again, the 3 counts he was convicted of, all involving the same woman. This was I have to check the facts on this, but I believe she was 30 and he was 63 at the time, but I will check that in a second. The 3 counts were penetration with lack of consent, penetration while unconscious, and penetration after administering an intoxicant. These are all felonies, and they're each punishable by up to 10 years in state prison, though the sentences could be served concurrently. So we're going to talk more about these details and about the details of the case, but also I want to tell you about this outburst that happened when, after the guilty verdict had been announced, there was some discussion in the courtroom of whether Bill Cosby should be allowed to be released on bail or not. And that was when Bill Cosby's pretty striking outburst happened. So let me get you the details of that real quick. I haven't seen video of it anywhere. If I do, I'll show it to you. But here, well, hang on a second. Let's see if it's in this article right here. Here we go. So, here is the outburst by Bill Cosby in the courtroom. Pretty striking, actually. So it says, New York Times says, Mr. Cosby sat back in his chair after the verdict was announced and quietly stared down. Several women who have accused Mr. Cosby of abusing them and attended the trial each day briefly cheered, then fell silent. So here's where the outburst happened. Judge Stephen T. O'Neill praised the jurors, causing it an extraordinarily difficult case and adding, "You have sacrificed much, but you have sacrificed in the service of justice." Then Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin R. Steele asked that Mr. Cosby's $1 million bail be revoked, $1 million bail be revoked, suggesting he had been convicted of a serious crime, owned a plane and could flee, prompting an angry outburst from Mr. Cosby, who shouted, "He doesn't have a plane, you asshole." So again, what was happening is they were discussing the bail, and there had been $1 million bail set for Bill Cosby after being convicted of these 3 crimes. And the DA the DA was asking that the bail be revoked. So the DA didn't want Bill Cosby to be able to go home on bail because he said Cosby had been convicted of a serious crime and Cosby owned a plane and maybe he could use that plane to flee. Now at that point, after he'd been convicted, when he heard that, Bill Cosby stood up and very loudly in the courtroom shouted at the DA, "He doesn't have a plane, you asshole," which is a pretty striking moment. A pretty striking moment that happened in the courtroom. After Bill Cosby stood up and said that, the judge said, "Enough of that." And then he said he did not view Mr. Cosby as a flight risk and said he did allow Bill Cosby to go home on bail. But Bill Cosby was made to surrender his passport and he has to remain in his nearby home. So he has a home near where he was convicted. He's going to have to remain there until sentencing. So he hasn't been sentenced yet. And also, there could be appeals, I know, in this case. So again, let's just summarize for people just joining the broadcast what's going on. Bill Cosby has been convicted of sexual assault today for an incident with one woman. He has been accused over the years by a number of women of sexual assault, but the actual crimes he was convicted of today involve an incident with one woman, and this was 14 years ago in 2004, and the three things he was convicted of, to read this to you again, in this incident were. Here we go. Penetration with lack of consent, penetration while unconscious, and penetration after administering an intoxicant. They're all felonies, each punishable by up to 10 years in state prison, though the sentences could be served concurrently. So it is conceivable, given that Cosby's 80 years old, it's conceivable he could spend the rest of his life in prison, depending on what the sentencing is and how his health is and stuff. So, so let's get you some of the details of this of the case now. And if you have comments on this, we want to read your comments on the air. So feel free to write to me during the broadcast. Let me know what you're thinking about this. And you can write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner on Twitter. Speaking of which, I'd love to see if there are any comments right now about this. I don't think anyone's written to me yet. Bob Meyer, one of our viewers, says, oops, hang on a second. Bob Meyer said, or one of my Twitter followers said, "I believe he is guilty, but wonder why plaintiff kept seeing Mr. Cosby after previous encounters." Well, let's get to some of the details of this story first about what happened here. So, now, real quick, this was the second time this case had come up. Last summer, this specific case had been tried at the same court, but there was a deadlocked jury, and there was so the trial ended. I believe it's declared a mistrial, and they tried it again this year. Let me show you the details of this trial. Oh, I think I skipped it over. So the incident involved Andrea Costand, at the time a Temple University employee who he had mentored. And this was in 2004. It's kind of odd here because I'm looking through this article. I probably should have picked a different article because this takes a while to get to the actual accusation. Here it is. It says, The case largely turned on the credibility of Miss Constand, who testified that in a visit in early 2004 to Mr. Cosby's home near Philadelphia, when she was 30 and he was 66, Mr. Cosby gave her pills that left her immobile and drifting in and out of consciousness. He said he had only given her Benadryl. The accuser, Miss Constand, said, I was kind of jolted awake and felt Mr. Cosby on the couch beside me, behind me, and my vagina was being penetrated quite forcefully, and I felt my breast being touched, she said. I was limp and could not fight him off. Adding weight to her accusations was the revelation that a decade earlier, in a deposition in Miss Constand's lawsuit against him, Mr. Cosby had admitted to giving Quaaludes to women in an effort to have sex with them. So he had admitted in a deposition that he had given women Quaaludes in an effort to have sex with them. Not in this incident, but in other incidents, and that helped the credibility of the accuser in this case. But the big, according to analysts I've heard in this article, a really big part of this case was that there were 5 additional accusers who testified at the case. So basically, I don't believe there was physical evidence that came up in this case. I might be wrong about that, but I haven't read about it. And remember, this happened in 2004, and it's only being tried now. So the case really centers around the accuser telling this story where she claims that Bill Cosby drugged her and then, had sex with her while she couldn't consent because she was drugged. She's accusing Cosby of that. Cosby saying he didn't do it. So it's the question comes down to who does the jury believe and find credible. Now, a really important part of the jury deciding credibility, according to analysts, the credibility of the accuser was the fact that 5 additional accusers were allowed to testify in court. So, as the Times says, perhaps most damaging was the testimony by the 5 additional accusers, which took up several days of testimony. In Bill Cosby's first trial last summer, only one other accuser had been allowed to add her voice to that of Ms. Constand. At the retrial, there were 5 accusers. They included the former model Janice Nickinson, who told jurors Mr. Cosby assaulted her in a Lake Tahoe hotel room in 1982 after giving her a pill to help with menstrual cramps. He was America's dad on top of me, she told the courtroom, a happily married man with 5 children on top of me. So, I haven't been closely following this trial, but something I wonder is, so you have, I guess what I'm wondering is, so the accuser, Miss Constand, says, Bill Cosby did this to me, on this night. I came over his place and then he gave me drugs and then he, sexually took advantage of me, sexually assaulted me. Now, if you don't have physical evidence, because it took too long ago, it happened. Now, I don't know about the physical evidence, like, they're not mentioning it here. I haven't heard any kind of mention of physical evidence, like there's a doctor's report from the day after this incident that said, there's evidence that somebody raped her or something. So it sounds like there wasn't that. I haven't heard about that. If that doesn't exist, you're relying on the woman's testimony versus Cosby's testimony. How much weight do these accusations carry? Because even if these 5 accusers, even if everything they're saying about Bill Cosby is true, that he did assault them after giving them drugs, that doesn't necessarily imply that in this particular case he did that as well. So so I'm very interested, having not followed this case, in what is the standard of belief? Is I guess beyond a reasonable doubt? Is that, I guess that's, I don't know. I'm guessing that might apply here. But what did the jurors legally have to figure out? Did they have to figure out, we think beyond a reasonable doubt that Bill Cosby did this? And my question is, as a juror, if I was on that juror, what would it take to make me think that this incident from 14 years ago, if I didn't get physical evidence, happened beyond a reasonable doubt? Not that it didn't probably happen or something, so I'm kind of interested in these questions. But again, there were 5 accusers in addition to Miss Constand. The 5 accusers talked about incidents where, in the other incidents, where they said Bill Cosby did something similar to them. Now, Cosby's defense suggested in cross-examination that Miss Dickinson had made up the account and pointed to the fact that in her memoir, she had recounted the meeting without making any mention of an assault. But Miss Dickinson's publisher testified that she had told her the rape account and it was only kept out of the book for legal reasons. Now, I don't think Cosby took the stand here. Let me see if I can find that in this case. I searched for stand, and now I'm getting constand. Well, that was a bad search. Anyways, I'll find that out in a second. But Swoosh says, Steve, always beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case, even a simple violation level offense. I'm Googling that right now. Here we go. Thank you, Swoosh. So I'm looking up the legal dictionary. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Oh, it's so slow to load. Here we go. So law.com says beyond a reasonable doubt is part of the jury instructions in all criminal trials in which the jurors are told they can only find the defendant guilty if they're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt of his or her guilt, sometimes referred to as moral certainty. And this is different than a civil case where one person's suing another person. It's funny. I never thought about that. I don't know if I ever knew that before, that in all criminal cases, it's always beyond a reasonable doubt. If I did know it at some point, I certainly forgot it. So thank you, Swoosh, for that clarification. So, yeah, an interesting question to me is what exactly was the evidence in this case? If I was a juror and I was presented with the evidence they were presented with, would I have thought it was beyond a reasonable doubt? It seems like a pretty high bar to convince someone that this thing that happened in 2004, if there's a lack of physical evidence, there's beyond a reasonable doubt that it happened. Very interesting to me. Okay, I'd love to get more comments from you guys on this. Again, Bill Cosby has been convicted of 3 counts of sexual assault. Cole Kelleher writes in, was the judge the same in both trials? That is an excellent question. It's an excellent question. So let me look this up. The judge in this trial was, I have it up here, Judge Stephen T. O'Neill. Let's see if he is listed as... Yeah, so the Montgomery County judge who has presided for 2 years over the sexual assault prosecution. So that makes it sound like he was the same. It is the same judge. Yeah, O'Neill has presided over the case since its outset, including last summer's trial. So the judge today was the same judge as the first trial last summer, which ended with a jury that couldn't reach an agreement, a deadlocked jury. So they had another trial this year. Dina K writes in, why didn't the statute of limitations apply in this case? So I did read that other accusers had not, the other accusers, I think, was it the other accusers who all testified in this case? They couldn't, it was too late for their cases to be brought, and this was like the one that still was within the statute of limitations. But let me look that up here. Here we go. I found the answer to your question. In most of these cases, the statute of limitations passed long before the women came forward. But in 2015, he was charged with a 2004 assault. So the question is, what is the Pennsylvania statute of limitations? That's a good question. Cosby, PA statute of limitations. Let's see if we can find it, guys. 12 years. Pennsylvania has a 12-year statute of limitations. I don't know if it's this kind of case or on all criminal cases, but there's a 12-year statute of limitations in Pennsylvania. And this assault happened in 2004, and the case was, he was charged, Cosby, in 2015, so just before the statute of limitations would have expired. Okay, let's summarize what's going on before we get into more details. So, Bill Cosby has been convicted on 3 different counts of sexual assault today by a Pennsylvania jury for an incident that happened in 2004 when Cosby, who was at the time in his 60s, he was charged with, and now he's been convicted with, assaulting a 30-year-old woman after giving her drugs of some sort and then taking advantage of her while she was drugged in his home. Now, he has been charged with the three things he was convicted of were penetration with lack of consent, penetration while unconscious, and penetration after administering an intoxicant. They're each felonies, each punishable by up to 10 years in state prison, though the sentences could be served concurrently. And there was a striking incident today after the jury had announced their verdict, where Bill Cosby got up and shouted something in the courtroom. And what that incident was, as described here, the Montgomery County District Attorney was asking that Cosby's bail be revoked because the district attorney said Cosby was a flight risk, and said Cosby was a flight risk, saying he'd been convicted of a crime, serious crime. He owned a plane and he could flee. And when the DA said that, Bill Cosby stood up in the middle of the courtroom and very loudly shouted, "He doesn't have a plane, you asshole." And then the judge told Cosby, enough of that. Now, something I've been seeing in the coverage of this is the question of whether the Me Too, hashtag Me Too movement might have affected this trial. So starting with, the Harvey Weinstein sexual accusations, where he eventually had to step down from, was he fired from his company or stepped down from his company? Anyways, he's not working in Hollywood anymore, Harvey Weinstein. There are civil suits, I believe, in process against Harvey Weinstein. There might be criminal investigations of him at some point, or criminal charges on Harvey Weinstein for sexual assault. But a lot of accusers, came out publicly and told their stories about Harvey Weinstein, who they say sexually assaulted them and sexually mistreated them. So, starting with Harvey Weinstein, as I'm sure a lot of you are well aware, there have been a number of well-known men who've been accused of sexual misconduct and forced to leave their positions. So Mark Halperin, the political columnist, no longer appears on MSNBC. Who are the other? I mean, there are just a bunch of them. There are Congressman John Conyers. News came out that he had settled. There were accusations of sexual misconduct of him with one of his employees, and so we've had congressmen, Jeffrey Tambor, actors, Hollywood producers, and with all of this, so with this new trend of women publicizing their accusations against prominent male accusers, and male accusers, prominent males losing their positions and their jobs and being disgraced in public because of these accusations of sexual misconduct. There's this question of, did that affect the jury today? And no one knows that right now. Well, maybe people on the jury know it. I don't know. I don't know if they know it. But there's this question of, the jury pool is from citizens who presumably have been familiar with this going on. Does that affect their mindset? Would this same verdict have happened with the same trial, say, a year or two ago before all of the Me Too stuff started happening? So that's a question that people are discussing. So we're talking right here about the Bill Cosby being convicted of 3 counts of sexual assault. And to go over again what the incident was that he was convicted of today, let me show you that. Here it is. He was on trial for drugging and assaulting a woman in 2004. There she is, Andrea Constand. Andrea Constand, a former Temple University employee, met Cosby in 2002 when she worked as the director of operations for the women's basketball team. And Cosby, a former Temple student, served on the university's board of trustees. Constand said she considered Cosby, then in his 60s, a mentor. In January 2004, at Cosby's home, she said, he gave her 3 blue pills that he told her would help to relieve stress. She took them and became unfocused and confused. She said she passed out on the couch. And then she said, I felt Mr. Cosby on the couch behind me and my vagina was being penetrated quite forcefully and I felt my breast being touched, she testified. This is her testimony in court. She said she was too weak to fight Cosby off. I wanted it to stop, she said. I couldn't say anything. I was trying to get my hands to move, my legs to move, and the message just wasn't getting there. And there were 5 other women in this trial who testified that Cosby did something similar to them. So we're taking your comments on the air here. If you have comments or questions on this Bill Cosby guilty conviction, give me a shout on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. New Wake Order asked, sexual assault, not rape. Well, if you read what he was convicted of, it certainly sounds like rape, although I don't know. It's possible that they don't call it rape in Pennsylvania law. So the exact things he was convicted of were these 3. I mean, there's penetration with lack of consent, which sounds like rape. They might just not call it rape. And I don't know what the laws are in different states. Maybe in some states they would say rape, but it's penetration with lack of consent. I mean, so if your definition of rape is penetration with lack of consent, then there you go. That's one of the counts he was convicted of. Then you would say he was convicted of rape. But perhaps it's not the term they used. The term they use legally in Pennsylvania. I want to see if there's any kind of like celebrity reaction or anything about, or like who's posting about this on social media. David Mack from BuzzFeed News posted this. It's a shot from Fox News where it says...
You remember Andrea Constant was a member of the women's basketball operation.
He's saying, incredible scenes as women run weeping from the courtroom immediately after Cosby is found guilty and tearfully embrace one another. Let's see the start of that again. No. Just more shots of women. I think those might be, some of them at least, might be some of the accusers who attended the trial and testified in the trial. Some of the other accusers. Oh, here's another shot. Here's another shot of that too. It says, NBC News posted this. It says, Cosby accusers leave court in tears after Bill Cosby is found guilty on all 3 counts of sexual assault. Cosby's attorney denounced the verdict. His attorney, Tom Mesereau, said, "We are very disappointed by the verdict. We don't think Mr. Cosby's guilty of anything, and the fight is not over." Hey, and there's Fox News also posted a court sketch. It says, this new court sketch depicts the Bill Cosby verdict in a Pennsylvania courthouse today. Cosby was found guilty of sexual assault. Kim Guilfoyle on Fox says she thinks Bill Cosby will appeal the case. I'm interested in knowing, are they going to appeal? What are they going to appeal on? Is it? Well, I mean, one of the things is they might say that the accusers, the 5 other accusers, should not have been allowed to testify. Does it say in here? So as we said, another major difference in the retrial was Judge O'Neill's decision to allow prosecutors to have 5 additional accusers testify, as they attempted to show Cosby made a habit of drugging and violating women. The judge just allowed 1 other accuser to take the stand last year. The judge also decided to allow the jury to hear that Cosby paid $3.4 million to Constant to settle her lawsuit against him more than a decade ago. I'd forgotten about that point. So she filed a civil lawsuit against Cosby more than a decade ago, and he paid her $3.4 million to settle it. So, and the judge allowed the jury to hear that fact. So you could imagine if you're a juror and you hear, wait, Bill Cosby paid this woman $3.4 million to settle the suit against him, you might think that suggests that maybe he was really guilty. This was another point I saw from the trial that has been mentioned a lot. The judge allowed Cosby's legal team to call as a witness a former co-worker of Constance at Temple University who said Constance spoke of setting up a high-profile person so she could sue and enjoy a big payday. Constance's lawyer, however, argued the co-worker lied about this. Swoosh in our chat room asked, does Cosby get the money back that he paid her in the lawsuit? You know, one thing I was thinking about that lawsuit, so I guess they had a settlement where Cosby was convicted today of sexually assaulting a woman. He paid that woman $3.4 million to settle a lawsuit that she filed against him a decade ago about this incident. Now, what I'm a little confused about is, was part of that lawsuit like well, let me say this. Suppose that the lawsuit involved a non-disclosure agreement, where he paid her $3.4 million and she agreed not to talk about it. I'm pretty darn sure that any kind of private settlement like that doesn't apply to a criminal case. So, like, if you can't have a private settlement with somebody where you pay them money and you make them sign a non-DA, and that non-DA doesn't let them testify in a criminal case. They still have to testify in a criminal case. So, have to testify? Yeah, because the state can call you as a witness and ask you what happened. And I don't think you can go on the stand, and you can't go on the stand. She couldn't go on the stand when the DA asked her, okay, what happened on this night, and say, well, I'm not allowed to talk about it because Bill Cosby paid me money. Then people could just buy off every witness against them in a court of law. Chronic Patriot on our chat room says, he allowed the sealed testimony to be unsealed due to him being a figure of moral character. The judge treated him differently than any other person. I can't speak to that. I don't know enough about this case, but interesting thought. Babu says, can't you sign a non-disclosure agreement in a criminal case? Well, I don't. No, I would say I don't think you can, because think about that. Then somebody with a lot of money could just pay people off to make them sign non-disclosure agreements, and then nobody could ever testify against the person. Those aren't binding those wouldn't be binding in a criminal case. I was going to look and see if there was any other kind of big reaction coming out about this right now. I'm sure there is. I'm looking for I was trying to find like our celebrities posting on this today on like Twitter about it, and I haven't seen many yet. Okay, this was helpful. Jay Garrett sent me this. Jay Garrett says, rape is a term used by some states. Sexual assault is a broader term, typically to include rape. So we were wondering before, this came up because a viewer asked why he was he not convicted of rape, because it sounds like what he did was rape. And what I was saying is, in the charges, the 3 charges he was convicted of, none of them was rape, although one of them was penetration without consent. And what I was saying is, maybe it's the case that in Pennsylvania they don't call it rape; they call it, penetration without consent. But then in another state it might be called rape. And what Jay Garrett wrote me at Lending Lawyer and said, rape is a term used by some states. So if Jay is right, and I have no reason to think he's wrong, it would just whether somebody's convicted of quote unquote rape officially just depends on whether the state has a crime called rape or they call it something else. But it's, the same kind of behavior. Thank you, Jay. Yes, and also helpful, Jay Garrett is helping to answer our questions today. I love it. Jay Garrett says, Non-disclosure agreement or statement of settlement in a civil case has no impact on the state's case against a defendant in a criminal matter, which is what I was saying before, which makes sense. Thanks, Jay. Jay, you get a gold star. Here is a message from our viewer, P-Cell. Let's read P-Cell's message. Thank you to our moderators, by the way. We have Barbara Braley and JC moderating. Oops, I forgot to tell Jake we were going on, so the website might not even be watching this. Hold on, I got to text Jake. Okay, done. So P-Cell, our viewer, writes in, you made all reasonable points, Steve, but isn't the timing interesting? What you see happening here is a powerful behind-the-scene forces trying to keep the country divided. By this I mean for the past days we have seen many in the African-American community boldly speaking in favor of the Republicans. By letting go of the black and white division in the country, many on the left fear this. So what is the best way to distract from this growing momentum of blacks in favor of Republicans? It is to present a popular black figure as a victim, therefore setting up division. Well, I assume you're not talking about P-Cell, like the jury thinking this, because this case has been going on for a long time. But maybe what you're talking about is the media coverage. Is that what you're talking about? That you think the media coverage is presenting him as a black figure's victim? I will say, before we came on the air, I was flipping through as I was preparing for the broadcast some different channels and stuff. I didn't really see Bill Cosby's race really come up. It's kind of interesting, actually. That's a whole interesting question of itself. In the press coverage of this, I really don't see Cosby's race come up much at all. At least in the stuff I've seen. Not to say it's never come up, but maybe, and is that if he was a different person, would that a different African American person, might that be the case? Might race be more prominent? Maybe, but yeah, in the coverage I've seen, the media coverage, it doesn't really. It's more the stuff I've seen in the media about Bill Cosby has more been about like it's a famous person, it's a powerful, influential person who is being held to account for what he did, whereas that might not have happened in the past. You're hearing that kind of thing said a lot in the press, but maybe you disagree with me, P-Cell. Hey, by the way, let me remind you, we are here at Right Side Broadcasting. We are viewer-supported. Your donations are what keeps us on the air, what allows us to provide an alternative to the mainstream media. So if you like our coverage, we hope you'll consider donating. You can donate by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat or click on the go to the bottom of the YouTube chat and click on the $ sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. Or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Oh, Real Frank is moderating as well. So we are just talking about this conviction and also taking some of your questions and your comments, interesting questions people and comments people have written in today. If you want to write to me, I'm on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. You can also follow me for breaking news coverage too on Twitter. Yeah, but it's this thing. It's another interesting thing about this is the following. So Bill Cosby has now been convicted by a jury of these crimes of penetration without consent and penetration while the victim is intoxicated. And now one question I have actually is was the jury. I would assume it has to be unanimous for a conviction on this. Yeah, I believe Yeah, the jury has to be unanimous because in 2017, that trial ended because they couldn't come to a unanimous decision. So it is interesting that the jury, which I believe would be 12 people, let me know if I'm wrong, unanimously convicted Cosby on. So the jury unanimously, all of them said, we are beyond a reasonable doubt that this happened. And as I was saying before, I don't believe there's like physical evidence. Like I don't believe, for example, physical evidence would be the victim went to a doctor the next day, had an examination, the doctor examines her and says, oh, she has physical signs that show she was raped. So given that there's no physical evidence, what I was wondering before is, what would be the evidence that makes a jury unanimously decide they all are beyond a reasonable doubt that this thing happened 14 years ago? I'm wondering how big that, we talked about how there were 5 other accusers who were allowed to speak in the trial and say Bill Cosby did something similar to me. But I'm wondering if that, again, that when I'm looking at what I've seen so far from the case, the settlement that he had with her, with the accuser, where he paid her $3.4 million a decade ago when she filed a civil suit about this incident. So this wasn't a crime that he was being accused of, and the government wasn't prosecuting it. She filed a civil suit about this about 10 years ago, and he paid her $3.4 million. So if I'm in the jury and I hear that might for me be like a really big thing. Because if I didn't have that information and I just heard, well, she says he did it, he says he didn't, yeah, he's accused by these other people, but that doesn't necessarily mean it happened in this case. I might think, well, there is a reasonable doubt that in this particular case this happened. I wonder if among the jurors, hearing about that $3.4 million settlement wasn't a really big deal. Because beyond a reasonable doubt is quite a high bar, especially when you don't have physical evidence. So I'd be interested in knowing more about all the evidence they got in this case and what led them to get to beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, Sephirin in our chat room points out he did admit to giving women quaaludes in a deposition. In a deposition from the civil case with Barbara Constant, he said he did admit that he had given women quaaludes in the past in an attempt to have sex with them. Quaaludes, is that like a downer? Sorry, folks, I don't use them. It's a sedative. It's a sedative. Now, but the thing is, it seems like, look, the evidence, the fact that so part of the evidence in this case was that he admitted in a civil suit to giving other women quaaludes in an effort to have sex with them. And part of the evidence was other women testifying that he had done something similar to them. But even if you have these accusations about what happened in other cases, and this evidence he did this in other cases, to me, there would still be a reasonable doubt about what happened in this particular case. And I don't know, if I was a juror and all I heard was, well, he said he gave quaaludes to women in some other incident or incidents, and a couple other incidents, let's say, and 5 other women come in and say, well, he drugged me. I still am thinking, well, but what happened in this case? I mean, it very well might have happened. So for me, I think you need something specific to this case to really, for me, to put me over beyond a reasonable doubt. I would need some evidence about this particular case. And you have her testimony, but you have his testimony saying it didn't happen. But again, for me, I'm just thinking that civil settlement on this case where he paid her $3.4 million to settle a suit about this particular incident would, for me, might have been the thing that pushed me over the edge. But I don't have all the evidence that they have, so maybe if I had all the evidence the jury had, I might point to something else. Edie Marie Loves Trump gave a donation. Thank you, Edie Marie. She says black women were Cosby victims. Justice was served. And also, in terms of the women who were, at least in terms of the women accusing him, who, in addition to the woman victim today, the other accusers who testified in court, I saw at least one black and one white accuser. Swoosh says, Steve, did Cosby testify? No, I believe Cosby did not take the stand. I will confirm that for you. Yeah, here we go. Bill Cosby will not take the stand in his sexual assault retrial. Now, another question legally that comes up is, if somebody does not take the stand, are you allowed as a juror to consider that as evidence of guilt? I would think there's a decent chance that you're instructed, look, people have a right to not incriminate themselves. Therefore, you shouldn't consider their not taking the stand as evidence that they did this. But I don't know. Maybe you can. I should Google this. Can juries consider defendant not testifying as evidence of guilt? Yes, look at this. Oh, I love it. We're finding out so much good legal stuff today. Well, this is, I don't know where this came from. This is court standard instructions to the jury in a criminal trial. But I don't know, is this all courts? I know it's in here. Oh, okay. I think is this standard jury? I want to get this. I want to see where this came from. Standard instructions to juries. I'm not finding like a standard. See, is this what they actually use? I don't know. Anyways, from this one, which I don't know where this came from, it says, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof so convincing that you would be willing to rely and act on it without hesitation in the most important of your own affairs. If you're convinced that the defendant has been proved guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, say so. If you're not convinced, say so. But there's something in here about the person not testifying. I can't find it. It says, chooses not to testify. Yes. Now in these instructions, I don't know if these are the same that were given to the jurors in Pennsylvania. It says, a defendant does not have to testify, and if a defendant chooses not to testify, you cannot consider that in any way during your deliberations. So if the jury was given instructions like this, then they would not have been able to consider his not testifying evidence in their deliberations. Somebody wanted me to look at the Google banner when I was Googling. Today's Google banner, by the way, is Fanny Blankers-Cohen, a Dutch track and field athlete. It's her 100th birthday. There you go. Swoosh says only in a civil matter will a refusal to testify count against you. Is that true? Okay. This is interesting. Yes. So, Swoosh, you're right about this. This says Texas rule of evidence. I don't know if this applies nationally. Maybe it does. The principle is well established in the criminal context where juries are instructed that the defendant cannot be compelled to testify, and that if he exercises his right not to testify, the jury cannot use this as any evidence of guilt whatsoever. In civil cases, however, the juries receive no such instruction. Patricia Kemp wants to know, is Bill Cosby married to the same woman? Yes, she is still married to Camille Cosby. So Camille Cosby is still married to Bill Cosby. So Patricia, that answers your question. It says spouse of Bill Cosby. Look on the right, spouse Bill Cosby. C.J. Muller in our chat room says he will probably die in jail. We will see what happens. What is this that I was just sent? Oh, ABC News posted a video of Cosby walking out of the courtroom after the verdict was announced. Bill Cosby exits courtroom after being found guilty on all 3 counts in sexual assault retrial. There you go. All right. If you have any comments, get them in soon. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes here talking about this. Interesting legal discussion. The New Jersey Devil says, hey, what's going on? Is Cosby going to jail? So he's been convicted of 3 different sexual assault charges. Each one carries up to 10 years in a state prison, but there's been no sentencing yet. So now here's a question. So I assume if he gets sentenced, here's my question. If he's going to appeal, so let's say the judge sentences Cosby to 15 years in prison, and then the lawyers are like, well, we're going to appeal. I would assume Cosby has to go to jail or prison, I guess it would be, until... Can he stay out of prison while it's being appealed? That's my question. Can you stay out of prison while your case is being appealed? Can a criminal stay out of prison while case is being appealed? Bail while waiting appeal. That's what I wanted to know. Some defendants can stay out on bail even after they've been convicted. Okay, let's see this. People who have been accused of a crime have a general right to bail pending trial. Those who post bail, blah, 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 blah. Although there isn't a federal constitutional right to bail during appeal of a conviction, post-conviction bail is available in several scenarios. For the most part, the laws of the individual states establish the circumstances in which defendants can bail out while they await resolution of their appeals. Up to the judge, it says. In the courts that allow, in states that allow this, trial court judges often have a great deal of leeway in determining whether to set bail and how high to make it. If a trial court decides the issue using the factors, blah, 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 blah. Well, I think he is out on bail now. So does that mean he gets to stay out until his appeals are handled? Right. So I was initially thinking, well, he's out right now, but he has to come back when he's sentenced. So there's two questions. So Bill Cosby walked out of the courtroom today and he went home and he's out on bail. The two questions one way of thinking about that is, well, he's out on bail until his sentencing hearing. But because technically he hasn't been sentenced to any jail time yet. But my other thought is he's out on bail until all of his appeals are resolved in the court system, which could take a long time. This is an interesting question. Okay. Here's an update. All right, here's an update. From AJ Plus, it says Cosby will remain out of jail until sentencing. Until sentencing. That does not say he'll remain out of jail even while his case is being appealed. So that's the so all I know right now is that he is not in custody right now, but he's out on bail right now, but that only lasts until sentencing. What I don't know is, given that his lawyers are going to appeal, can Cosby stay out on bail after that? Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the answer is no, because he has been convicted of sexual assault. Maybe if it was like a minor crime, he could stay out, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has to be in jail while his appeals are being heard. Jerry Sherfy in our chat room says it's up to the judge whether he can stay out of jail on bail, stay out of prison on bail after sentencing if he's going to appeal it. Todd Joseph says, why wasn't he hauled away in cuffs? That's up to the judge. The judge allowed Cosby to remain out of jail until sentencing. It's an interesting question, though. I'm trying to find out an explanation of why why bail was granted. So the Las Vegas Review-Journal says he's free on bail after convictions in sex assault trial.
So Joe Holden again was inside that court.
Stop. Right. Let's see if this says anything. The judge decided Cosby can remain free on bail while he awaits sentencing. It doesn't say why the judge said that. It is a good question. Yeah, and I don't know. I can imagine a lot of different reasons. Maybe that's standard practice there. Maybe it all depends on whether the judge thinks he's a flight risk. By the way, he could get up to 10 years in prison for each of the 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. He is likely to get less than that under state sentencing guidelines, but given his age, even a modest term could mean he will die behind bars. Also, this was the only criminal case to arise from allegations from more than 60 women who said the former TV star drugged and molested them over a span of 2 to 5 decades. Now, I'm wondering, why was this the only criminal case? Exactly. Did he settle with a lot of women? Did a lot of prosecutors not believe the women? Did the women just not want to testify? Here's my question. Why were there no other cases against Bill Cosby? Does Wikipedia have anything on this? Now, I know most of the alleged acts fall outside of statutes of limitations, but why why weren't criminal charges being brought in any of these cases earlier? Well, did the women just not speak out about it? Is that what happened? So here's an example of one where it says Christina Ruelli accused Cosby of drugging and assaulting her in 1965, but she did not speak out about it in public until 2005. Swoosh says, don't forget the good time as well. That reduces the sentence. So I'm not sure exactly. Oh, so Jerry Sherfy says, yes, they were silent. So our viewer, Jerry Sherfy, says the reason there had never been a criminal charges against Cosby before, even though he'd been accused by over 60 women, is that the women stayed silent, and so that these accusations were not made public until after the statute of limitations, except in this case. Interesting. A lot of interesting aspects to this. So the one thing we don't know is, well, one thing we don't know, probably a lot of things we don't know, but one thing we don't know is, for sure, is I'm assuming once he's sentenced, he will have to go to prison even while his case is being appealed in court. Because I haven't seen it said otherwise. But maybe I'm wrong. Now, some of you, like Dave in our chat room, think Cosby is innocent. I will say, though, that, look, there has been a jury of, whatever you think about this, there has been a jury of, I believe, 12 people in Pennsylvania who unanimously decided that they were convinced, all of them, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this happened. But some of you think he's innocent. Or some of you think he's guilty. Interesting to see the discussion. Evelyn Ryan, thank you for the article on bail while waiting appeal. Yeah, we were looking at an article. We were looking at that article earlier on camera. Thank you. All right, I think we're going to wrap this up right now. I need to get my packing done because tomorrow I am headed out to cover President Trump's rally in Washington Township, Michigan. I will be there along with Maggie Howell and cameraman Aaron and a special mystery guest. Oh, I might as well tell you who it is, because a lot of you have figured it out. Our mystery guest, it's no longer a mystery. It is Tara Broderick. Hang on, folks. I'm spoiling the mystery, but that's because it's kind of known at this point by a lot of people. So Tara is the newest right side anchor and reporter. You can see her, Tara, I'm losing my mind. Tara Broderick, I apologize, Tara. Tara is the newest right side anchor and reporter, and you can see her at TaraRSBN on Twitter. And she will be there with us on Saturday. So we're looking forward to having her with us there. And you can see her and all of us and President Trump's rally on Saturday. And we'll start our coverage several hours early, probably around 3 in the afternoon. I think the rally's at 7. So we hope you join us for the rally coverage. All right, I'm going to get off the air and go pack. I literally have an empty suitcase that I have to fill. And thank you for joining us for the coverage. Thank you for the very educational legal discussion. Enjoyed discussing these legal points with you today. All very interesting points. So if I hear updates about this, I will post it on my Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner on Twitter. You can follow me for breaking news. Also, you can follow and subscribe to us, Right Side, to know when we're coming on the air with live videos. We're on Facebook and YouTube at Right Side Broadcasting, Twitter at RSB Network, Periscope RSBN TV. And thank you to the moderators, JC, Real Frank, and Barbara Brayley. Appreciate your moderating, and Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Yes, Real Frank, not only am I going to bring a jacket, I emailed all the others and told them to bring warm clothes. And thank you for saying thank you, everybody. People like Dan the Man, Hillbilly Nitro says safe travels. Yes, Bacon Cat, there's a rally on Saturday. Thank you, The Red J. Thank you, Patricia Kemp. Liz is not available for this rally, unfortunately. I mean, we're very happy to have Tara coming, but Liz is still doing rallies. She just couldn't make this one. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mesla. Thank you, Light Switch, Propis, Jerry Sherfy. Judy Inman is not happy with the verdict. New Jersey Devil, thank you. Bacon Cat, we'll see you. We'll see you. Oh, Bacon Cat's going to the rally. Feel free to come say hi to us, Bacon Cat, when you're there. You'll see us there. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Bushwhacker. Thank you, Deccan. Thank you, people watching on Periscope. Oh, I should check the Facebook chat. And a reminder, we are viewer supported. If you like Right Side Broadcasting and you want to see it continue, want to see our programming continue, please consider donating. To donate, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Julie Jordan in the Facebook chat says, why is the Facebook broadcast slow? Says he was such a great actor and a damn good comedian. Very odd. The Facebook stream is not working very well, and I don't know why. It's like blurry. But the YouTube stream seems fine. I'm just looking at the Facebook chat. Evie Ryan, I see that you posted a bail article too and said, send this to Lookner. Thank you for doing that. Joanna Connor says, I feel bad. I don't want him in jail at his age, but he has to be punished. Aaron McClure says he is on bail until sentencing, and then if they file appeal, he is still on bail unless the judge denies the bail. That's what we were saying, that it's up to the judge. So maybe the judge hasn't decided yet. But Arun, the news reports I've seen today only say he's on bail until sentencing. I've read nothing saying the judge has decided to leave him on bail even after sentencing until his appeals are taken care of. Actually, and technically, they haven't even filed appeals yet. So, anyways, all right, we'll keep an eye on this. All right, I gotta go. I gotta go pack. Lynn Marie Hardy, we are sorry about the notifications, you not getting them. That's a constant problem with YouTube. By the way, you might want to make sure that your notifications bell hasn't been switched off. When will he be sentenced? Athena wants to know. When will he be sentenced? Let me tell you that. Good question. Later this year, He's going to be sentenced sometime later this year. I don't know when. Good question. Okay, that's it. I'm wrapping up. I got to go pack. Thank you for joining us. Socksman says on Periscope, Socksman says within 100 days. That's what Socksman says on Periscope. Thank you, Socksman. Thank you, Justin Ball, for your nice comment on Facebook. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to the moderators. And we'll see you soon with more news. All right, I'm going to go pack right now. Thanks for joining us for our coverage of Bill Cosby, the Bill Cosby guilty verdict. And we will see you soon with more news here at Right Side Broadcasting. Have a good day.